So I'll start because you asked to say personally why I think music is important to
Oh,
protest.
okay, right, yeah.
So I'll talk about that. And it's interesting that there's been a little bit of talk about religion. So although I don't consider myself at all a practicing Catholic anymore, I certainly was raised in the Catholic faith. I went to Catholic school all of my life, which meant a lot of mass actually. And, in Catholic Mass, there is a ton of singing. There's a lot of singing. And my mother always used to, because I didn't like to sing, because I didn't like my voice. And my mother always said to me, singing is like praying times two. Praying twice, right? Praying twice, exactly. So you get like double the credit because if you sing it, is what I figured. So thinking about that makes me think about protest song and how singing a protest song is like protesting whatever that protest is, whether it's a lament or sadness or anguish or anger, and doing it twice. So
I've never heard that before. I'm writing it down because that's what I do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about how I first became interested in protest. So I first became interested in protest in 2014 during the uprising in Ferguson.
Right.
I was already teaching, but I had been a public defender for some time in Washington, D.C. And although I was teaching, I still, even today, still identify as a public defender. And I'm sorry, I have notes because I'm not used to these many lights. And so I was certainly accustomed, unfortunately, to seeing law enforcement abuse, violent mistreat, and generally dehumanize those people who were my clients, who were poor people accused of crimes. Watching police being able to treat communities and activists grieving the police killing of Michael Brown with the same disdain and the same violence that I had seen law enforcement treat my clients was actually startling to me. Let me be clear that I never believed that the way that police engage with my clients, I still don't believe that the way that police engage with people who are suspected of crimes is by any means should be justified. I still believe that the system permits police to use way too much force in their interaction with criminal suspects. Still, I saw activists as separate from criminal defendants because they were engaging in constitutionally protected speech and conduct that I believe the Constitution considered desirable. So now I'm going to quote Supreme Court justices because I am a law professor. So like Supreme Court Justice Brandeis said back in actually 1927 in a case called Whitney, when he discussed First Amendment freedoms, the founders, and here I'm quoting from the opinion, from his concurrence, believed that freedom to think as you will and to speak as you think are indispensable to the discovery and the spread of political truth. If I could make that into a song, I would make that into a song. The greatest menace to freedom is an inert people. And also that it is hazardous for government to secure order through force or to discourage thought, hope, and imagination. Knowing how Justice Brandeis' words were often repeated and lauded by the court, it was confusing to me to see individuals exercising their First Amendment rights treated basically like criminals. However, as I researched and I learned, so I don't know that I'm going to tell you anything that brings you hope, but as I research and learn more about the policing of protests, I realized that criminal law is and has historically been really a powerful tool to silence dissent. To my dismay, the fact that people were engaged or are engaged in constitutionally protected speech, like when you go out to the streets in political expression, did not actually protect them at all, as long as the police could make out a case that they were breaking any law. From being out past curfew, to blocking the street, to not following a police order, to trespassing even on public property, police did not have to account in any way for the fact that activists were engaging in protected speech and expressions. And the courts actually deferred even more to police in circumstances of mass protests. And like irregular policing, the authority to arrest means the authority to use force, unfortunately. So you know, fortunately, I will say there has been a surge of not only is there traditional criminal law, which of course helps suppress dissent, but there has also been really a surge of anti-protest legislation since 2017, particularly in 2020. Fortunately, and I was talking to the people who welcomed me, new friends over there, and it is fortunate to live in Massachusetts. That anti-protest legislation has not been passed within Massachusetts. But still, we do have criminal law, obviously, in Massachusetts that can be exercised as a powerful tool for police. So in any event, these are not good news. Protesting remains risky. Standing up to the government authority is risky, not to mention, of course, the possibility of political violence, which we all abhor and fear. So the easiest thing, I will admit, is to be silent. And actually, as I was telling James earlier on, for some people, like non-citizens, for example, I would affirmatively advise those people to be silent. As an immigrant myself, like James mentioned, I know deportation fear, and I would be silent had I not already been naturalized. But I would urge, so I'll finish with this. I would urge most of us, those of us who have privilege, to resist, to be silent. And here I will quote somebody else. I will quote Frederick Douglass. He wrote, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. So I would say the tyranny depends on your silence. So although it makes sense for some of us particularly to be silent, I do appreciate those who can afford and do stand up and go to the streets, who argue for academic freedom even when they disagree with the speaker, who support student protesters even when it is loud, messy, and inconvenient, who record ICE and sound the alarm when they see them in their neighborhood, and of course, those who sing.